So, Lou, I think that one of the things that you've been doing recently is doing some work on phytophthora. We did a couple of reports very early when we started making this podcast about phytophthora. And at that time, various people got back to me and said that was really interesting. It's great to know what's happening to the big cypress hedges and things in the highlands. Sad, but, at least we understand what's going on. But what can we do? What can be done about it? Lou, can you give us an update on that?
Well, we've taken a lot of advice from some very serious people in the Department of Primary Industries and the Royal Botanic Gardens, and it's never quite straightforward. The trouble with phytophthora is it is this fungus type thing, but it's not a fungus. It's called an oomocyte, and an oomocyte is basically a water mold, and it has spores, and the spores swim in water underground. When the plants are getting saturated, they can swim into the roots and cause root rot. And that blocks the transport system of the nutrients in the water getting up into the trunks of the trees, and actually it is fatal. Now, we were particularly concerned that of the tests we did, many of them were on cypresses. Leylandii, Cypress turulosa, not all, but the native plants that we tested seemed okay. But what we do know is there are at least 26 species of phytophthora.
Oh.
Yes. And not all of them are exotics that came in. Some were, but some are also Australian species.
All right.
And between the 26 of them, they can affect absolutely, well, not every plant, but a lot of plants, including eucalypts.
Uh-oh.
So this is a big threat in national parks and places, wild places. And so what we've been trying to discover is really for the land holders, the land users who are using them as boundary fences and shelter belts and wind breaks for privacy as well, what can they plant instead? Because there's a whole gamut of trees and plants that can be affected. And in Western Australia, for example, the jarrah forests have been decimated by phytophthora. And so giving advice about what people can plant instead comes down basically to some really common sense things. To start with, it's not smart really to plant all in a line one plant, one species of one anything. It is much better to have a diversity of plants. That way you can hedge against other adverse conditions as well, like drought and so on and so forth. So ideally, the one-liner does not work well. It can get easily knocked off by a pest or disease, a phytophthora, for example. Equally, it really isn't a good windbreak. One line of trees in a boundary does not actually make the wind. It twists the wind round into a kind of spiral. It doesn't really just lift it and take it over in the way that you would like. So it's better to have, if you can do it, at least 2 lines in your boundary, if not 3. Maybe a tree, a shrub, and a ground cover. Then you get that lift from the wind, and it doesn't curl under afterwards. It just moves on. And so from a windbreak perspective, that is one of the smartest things you can do. It turns out this is one of the smartest things you can do for phytophthora as well.
Oh, yeah.
And in fact, for your stock and for your plants, because you reduce the evaporation on your paddocks, and you may get hit by a pest or a bug, a phytophthora, say, or it might be a beetle, but not all the plants, if they're different, are likely to get hit. So this really is a story where it starts with, this nasty little water mold, but really when you start to look at it, the solutions are solutions for so many
several
other things.
Problems. Yeah.
Single problem,
that's great.
including climate change, of course.
Yeah.
So the recommendation really is to plant a diversity of trees and plants and preferably local, native plants.
Great.
Cypresses are really at the edge of the tolerance level here, and clearly they cannot cope with this inundation of roots. So I would say if I was a farmer, I'd be giving them the boot.
Oh,
Yeah.
very good. Thank you. So that's a potential solution to more than one problem. I like it.
Yeah, in the end, I find it magnificent that really what we thought would be a good idea, it equally works for shelter belts. It works for stock. There are a few problems that I can see landowners might come up with, like it's difficult to keep the grass down, you have to fence it, it's expensive, but I think the benefits madly outweigh
The downside.
the downside.
Yeah. Good.